Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to quickly talk about a record that I quite enjoyed. I am talking about TEMPESTARII's new record, Constellation of Dead Stars. Seemed to kind of drop out of nowhere. Wasn't really a big hype from what I saw leading up to the release. I didn't see the pre-release single or anything like that. It just sort of like appeared. And I followed this band for a while. Basically ever since my band played with them back in 2018 or so. 2018, 2019, whatever it was. And yeah, normally I wouldn't want to do like reviews of bands that I have a prior history with, only because I worry that sometimes that would sway my biases or leads to some murky integrity kind of stuff. Like I want to make sure that I'm talking about albums that I like, and I want to make sure that I'm talking about albums that I care about, but at the same time, I don't want it to sway things in my immediate surroundings, if that makes sense. So typically I've gone with more records that are from people that I don't know personally, or that I haven't had, conversations with and whatever else. But I do really like this band, and I have followed them since then. They were, I think, originally from Boise. I think the main guy moved to Minnesota, but now we're dealing with their new one. So A Constellation of Dead Stars. What did I think of it? I will say that this is definitely on the most extreme end of atmospheric black metal. And when I say that, I mean it's very much soundscape, texture based, rather than melodic lines or any real riffing kind of thing. It does sort of lean a little bit onto the ambient side. That side, it does still have its moments. So starting with Radiant Asunder, the intro and the outro reminded me quite a bit of like early Wolves in the Throne Room. Very chimey, very low synths, very humming. I will say throughout the record, in addition to this song especially, I noticed the strange sort of dissonant chord voicings helps settle into that unsettling atmosphere. The drums are heavy and fast, very fast kick drums. I do believe it is, if not entirely drum machined, it is definitely probably replaced trigger samples. The vocals sound great, drenched in echo and reverb. Definitely has that haunting sort of thing, and I like the levels of the vocals compared to the instrumentation as well. I will say too, I noticed on this one, and it is a theme sort of throughout the record, that the keys sounded great, but also great in conjunction with the bass and drums. It creates this really massive wall of sound, and I think it really fits with this style of atmosphere. Second track is Sorrowful Concrescence. I found that the outro from Radiant Asunder drifted really well into this one. Has some much brighter guitars to open this one as well, compared to Radiant Asunder, which was a little bit more of the low end sort of humming kind of vibe. I will say when it does switch into that feel on this song, I did get a little bit of like that Batushka, the first record Batushka sort of thing, where they have the background vocals doing the humming. It just sort of reminded me of that a little bit. And just some other things. There were some moments where the track sort of stops and then sort of starts up again, and I just think that could have been just a little bit more impactful with how it sort of stopped and came back in. And I liked the clean guitars at about the 5-minute 30 mark. I thought they sounded really great. The next one, The Restless Earth, I thought was maybe their most intense song on the record. Progresses really well, has some actual like really distinguishing guitar lines. Some of the other songs are more like a feeling kind of thing, whereas this one definitely had some moments that were like more noticeable as like a guitar part. I also really liked the chord progression around the 5-minute mark as well. I thought that sounded great. Last track, In Dreamless Sleep. Again, a bit of a Wolves in the Throne Room vibe at the beginning. So this one felt a little bit more like epically transcendent in the chord progression. Especially at the start. It's a little bit less gloomy. It's a little bit more of that sort of triumphant kind of feel. The guitars are very audible here in this section as well. It doesn't quite blend with the keys in the same way as some of the earlier tracks. And it progressed a little bit faster. So we had a bit of a vibe switch around the 4.5-minute mark, and then it switches again at sort of a minute later, and then a minute after that changes again. And I thought that progression was quite cool. Suited the album, and I felt that it created just this moment of change from like the rest of the record, so I really appreciated that. It does end with 3 minutes of shuffling and ominous synths. My impression of that was, you know, maybe it's like the field of reeds and you're walking through the field of reeds and it's the sort of the sound of the swishing grass and whatever else, sort of mixed with just sort of some background synths. I do feel like that motif in particular is a little bit cliche now at this point, to sort of end or begin an atmospheric black metal record with sort of a swishing sound and sort of like this feel that you're walking through something. I just feel like it's been done quite a few times. So just something to point out there. It's kind of neither good nor bad, but it is something noticeable for me. But yeah, overall, a constellation of dead stars. The entire thing is quite meticulously constructed. I liked how the songs would sort of weave into each other quite well. It does sort of feel like a larger piece, even though if they're sort of smaller songs throughout it. And within that, I liked the recurring theme of this sort of storm thing that's happening. There's a lot of thunder and that kind of sounds kind of rolling in and out in between tracks. And within that, I think the sound and the sound textures and the synths worked really well in conjunction with the more typical metal instruments. I just think the tone of everything fits really well together. Creates that nice like atmospheric black metal hum, which I think is really cool. Like I said, very atmospheric, at times almost ambient, again with that humming kind of vibe. And it creates that sort of nice meditative sort of feel, which I think is a plus in the style of black metal. Each song, in addition, sort of has its own sort of thing going on with it. It's not like a repeating similarity between tracks where everything sort of feels the same done over and over again. There is definitely a change in feel between the songs, even if the transitions and the riffing is sort of similar. I don't know if this is achieved through the drums or if it's just the overall vibe. I will say the chord voicings that they've chosen to use on this record are quite interesting, quite dissonant. So I think just how they've constructed the chord progressions might have also contributed that as well. I will say as well, this is not a record for fans of just straight up riffs. This is definitely a record to sort of feel the intensity of and sort of feel that intensity, that hum, that sort of meditative state. I think it achieves that quite nicely. It's sort of this introspective, almost like therapy kind of record where long drives, you could just sort of tune everything out and kind of, you know, listen to your own thoughts, almost like enhanced thinking. So in that way, I definitely feel like it sets out what it tries to do, or it achieves what it tries to do. So if you're looking for something a little bit different, if you like that atmospheric style of black metal, if you like Wolves in the Throne Room, if you like DSBM too, it does definitely have a little bit of that sort of shrieking despair quality to it. I think you'll like this record as well. Yeah, I think overall I'll give it an 8 out of 10. And I'll leave you there. Check out the record in the link below, and we'll see you in the next one. Deuce.